Hi there, my name is Gemma and I'm a photographer. I specialise in interiors and food and people photography. I also run workshops, and these are to help people to take better photographs, whether that be individually or for their businesses. Recently, I ran a workshop with 91 Magazine, who I work with a lot, to help small businesses be more creative with their photography, to understand how better to take photographs to represent their brand. You might be taking photographs these days for your Instagram, your blog, your website, product photography. You have to keep updating pictures on your website. It's increasingly more important that small business owners do understand how to make their pictures stand out from the crowd. So the webinar that I ran really helps to cover a lot of aspects of this. Hopefully to give everyone a basic knowledge of how to take their photography to the next level. The webinar is aimed at both product and service businesses, small businesses. A service might be a cafe, you might be a yoga teacher, business coach. So yes, everything is, all the principles of what I'm saying is, covers all businesses. I also would like to sort of say, before I jump into my top tips that I took out of the webinar, that you could be using a camera, you could be using a mobile phone. A lot of us use mobile phones because that's what we have on us all the time, but they're not going to be the best quality for like maybe main pictures on your website, or if you actually want to print anything. So I would seriously consider investing into a DSLR or a compact system camera. So in the webinar, I do cover a lot about the equipment and the equipment I recommend. I also talk about lighting, composition and styling. I talk about depth of field, which is how you get that lovely blurred background behind your object or subject matter. And finally, the webinar covers editing and apps and the best sort of software or apps that I recommend. So just to whet your appetite, I am going to give you 5 of my top tips that I've taken from that webinar. The first one is, when you are an owner of a camera, there is a lens that I'd like to recommend. So my top tip lens is a 50mm lens. Okay, so the 50mm lens is what we call a fixed lens, and you can get all of these for all your cameras, and sometimes your camera actually comes with it. What a 50mm lens does is pretty much how we see naturally with our eye. Now, you've heard of wide angle lenses, fisheyes, telephoto that zoom in on the object. Well, what all this does is distort the perspective of the subject matter, and it's not real truth to form. But what we see with our eyes, pretty much what you get with a 50mm lens. So it doesn't distort the perspectives, which is really important for your product photography. And leading on to my next tip, that is also about product photography. We can shoot our products, whether it be in a lifestyle fashion, so you might want to shoot it on a table with props or somebody using the product. You also might want to photograph it on a plain white background. This is very useful for submitting your product for magazines, for example, because they just want it with just a white background. So the best way to shoot this is get yourself a piece of white card. I'm using a bit of A4 here, and you curve it like this. So this bottom bit will be on the table, and this bit you'll stick to the wall or supporting object. And then what you do is you put your product or your subject matter there. And as you can see, you photograph it from this angle, you can see there are no lines or creases. So that gives a really clear white background with no fussiness going on with seams or edges of tables, things like that. So that's my second tip. My third tip is to do with lighting. So if we want to shoot indoors, we want to take our product or our subject matter. It could be a person, a portrait, could be just a nice sort of lifestyle image you're taking, but you want to go to a north-facing window. Now, a north-facing window gives us nice kind of flat lights as opposed to harsh, bright sunlight coming in. Now, of course, some people want the harsh, bright sunlight effect, which is fine. It's just as long as you understand, the difference and the effects it has. So a harsh light will give your subject matter very, very harsh shadows. So the room might have harsh shadows being cast across it, your product, your object, your person. So it could be very dark one side, very light one side. It's all about balancing the light. So yeah, a north-facing window is best for indoor photography. My next tip is all about perspectives. So we have a number of different perspectives. We have landscape, portrait, we have from an angle. You might point your camera from an angle. We also have overhead. So always remember to consider all of those perspectives when you're shooting, because one will suit your product better than another. So what from above, the main point I want to make here is when you're shooting from above, all your objects below will be squashed and perspectively will look the same height. So if you want your image to show different height objects, do not shoot from above. So if you've got a bunch of bottles which are all different heights, don't shoot it from above because they'll all look the same height. And also just get little round circles, that's all you'll get. So yeah, really think about your subject matter and what angle suits it best. A bonus tip on this is if you are shooting with a mobile phone, the standard lens on a mobile phone is very wide. So it will always distort the perspective of your subject matter. They're great for architecture and landscapes, but what I'd recommend if you are using your mobile phone for your product photography is you use it above. Again, remembering about the flattening of objects, but a mobile phone definitely shoots much better from overhead, and all your flat lays, definitely that's fine with a mobile phone, but stick to that if possible. And then back to my earlier point, invest in a camera. And finally, my last point is about planning your shoot. So I get lots of inspiration before I do a shoot. It helps to give me clarity on the style and the consistency of the style. Where I think about the location, I think about the propping. Do the colours, are they cohesive colours? They all come together. I make a mood board, you know, from magazines, Instagram, Pinterest, just looking at my competitor's website or any website, you know, just gather together lots of ideas and just consolidate them to make sure that your shoot is consistent and the style is representative of your business and you don't get confused halfway through. So that's it for today. And my webinar with 91 covers all of this in a lot more detail, as well as lots of other bits of information. I've only just picked out 5. It was very hard to pick out just 5 to tell you. So if you hop over to their website, you can download a copy of that webinar. It was about 2 hours long, so you get lots of information in there. And also keep an eye out for any future workshops that we'll be running. So thanks very much for listening, and I'll see you soon. Bye.